Hello, everyone, and welcome to Brothers on the Board, the podcast where we help teachers find peace and fulfillment in their careers. My name is John. I'm joined here today with my brother Wes. We're two teachers who just likes helping people and trying to share what we know and maybe learn a little something along the way. So today's episode is an episode that's a little more lighthearted. It's not as much about maybe content or delivery or anything like that, but we want to see how many teachers have experienced some of these relatable issues or things that happens in the classroom. And we just want to have a discussion about it. We just thought it would be fun. So, Wes, I had to think outside the box for some of these. How about you?
Yeah, me too. It was tough coming up with ones that I think a lot of people will relate to, and that are challenging, but lighthearted. So
Yeah. So some of these I came up with that, like the first few that I got, I was like, okay, everybody's done this. Like a lot of people are going to know this. So what we're discussing here today are things that happen inside the classroom or things that we do as teachers that, um, in some cases, maybe I don't want to say a little like people don't want to admit, but is something that we all do probably at some point or another, and you're probably going to hear them and think, "Oh my God, I do that too." Like that is something that is very relatable, and it's just something that we want to discuss and share and see if other people do these as well. So, Wes, as always, start it the same way every time. I'm going to give you the floor and let you tell us what is one thing that you do in your classroom that you think many other teachers can relate to or will have done at some point where they're like, "Oh yeah, I've done that."
all right, so this first one, I'm going to start out with the ones that I think that everyone has done. Like you said, like one that's like, oh yeah, definitely. I feel like everyone has done
Yeah.
it, but it is super embarrassing. And it's something that I think we all can admit to. And that is while you are teaching in the middle of instruction and you are
Okay.
walking around and it's very serious and it's quiet and all the kids are attentive and engaged, and then you trip over a chair or a desk or bump into something.
Okay. Dude, I ain't gonna lie, man. That's not where I thought you were going with this. Everything's quiet. And I'm like, oh no. Okay.
So everyone's quiet. You trip over a desk or a. I'm terrible. So since I'm in a science classroom, I have multiple trash cans, and I will trip over that trash can a good 2 to 3 times a week. The kids are like,
Because
Mr.
you're not
Howard is
looking.
going to fall at some point in this class because I'm just so engaged in what I'm doing and like talking about whatever it is. The best is whenever I'm doing like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to get the kids' attention. Like whenever they're talking in
Okay.
groups, I'll count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And as I'm doing that, it's getting quiet. It's nice. Everyone's looking up at me. And then, boom, I trip over something and they just die laughing. I've lost them. It happens to me all the time.
I do that. Another thing that I do that's kind of relatable to that is I have a lanyard that hangs off my keys. And as I walk down the rows, my lanyard will lasso desks, the chairs, and I will drag them down the row. And all the kids will be like, but I've got so good at it now that I can feel immediately when that lanyard grabs something and I can stop on a dime and like unlatch it before. But for a long time, I was doing that, man. I was the Wild Wild West. I was just lassoing desks as I walked around the room.
Just pulling all
So
kinds of stuff with you.
yeah, just awful. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that one. That's one that I do all the time. Or I back into things, right? Like I'll be backing up and I'll back into a desk or I'll back into a table or whatever, and I've got pretty good at playing it off. Like, okay, just keep teaching and just hope nobody saw that. But yeah, that's one that I do all the time. Like I think we all do those. Okay, my first one, and this is one that I do a lot as an English teacher, especially. I do this a lot because you don't want to get caught on this one as an English teacher. I'll be writing on the board and I'll get to a word that I don't know how to spell, or at least I'm not entirely sure. I think I do, but I'm not entirely sure. So what I'll do is I'll start spelling it, and then I'll write like the first two letters. I'm like, and then I'll be like, okay, I can fix this. So then I'll erase it, and I'll come up with like a synonym, like a word that means something similar, but I know how to spell. So I'll do that one a lot because like I'm awful at getting like I's and E's mixed up. You know, I before E and all that stuff. Like I'm awful at that. So that is one that I do all the time. Like it, I keep telling people like I'm an English teacher, but man, I'm not always the best speller in the world.
Yeah, I get B's and D's still sometimes, like backwards, like lowercase b and d. Sometimes, like that'll happen to me occasionally. But I at least fall back on the well, I don't teach English. Like I've had a few times where kids have corrected like spelling, and I'm like, yeah, you were right, you're correct, and I'll fix it. But I do the same thing sometimes. I'll be like, I'll be writing it, and I'll get to that point, and I'll be like, it doesn't look good. I'm going to fix that, and then I'll change it to a whole other word.
It's like the clubhouse out in our backyard that we had growing up. I wrote only doys only doys allowed. It's like
Toys.
so it's gonna be like that, getting the B's and the D's mixed up. I ain't that bad. I don't do that one, but I understand it. I understand it. I think that's something that almost everybody can relate to. It reminds me of the have you ever watched How I Met Your Mother?
Yeah.
The episode where he's writing on the board and he's trying to write professor and he writes PROF and then he like stops. He's not sure if there's two F's. So he stops and he looks at the kid behind him and the kid just shakes her head no. And then he like makes it an E and then she's like, yes. And then he just keeps going.
I know
It's like one of
exactly
my
what you're
favorite clips.
talking about. Yeah, and that's exactly how it plays out in my room sometimes. So I'm like, hey, I'm not an English teacher. I tried my best, but sometimes spelling's not my strong suit. So
Yeah, it's like I don't have to worry about this too much. I don't have a lot of credibility to lose. All right. Okay, yeah, I think that's something that everybody will definitely that hears this. They're like, yeah, that's done that many times, and I'll be anxious to see in the comments like kind of how people have handled these things, and also how like just variations of it, like things that they've done that are similar to that, right?
mhm.
So fantastic. All right, your second one. We're on your number two now. What is something else that you think you've done that many people would relate to?
All right. So my number two is going to be: have you ever forgotten a student's name? Now, I know, but we're all human and we all make mistakes. And sometimes we, can have a little mind fog and forget a student's name, and that happens. Um, and how do you play that off? Because what I do is I'm like, how do you spell your last name? That's the trick. That's my go-to. And I have done that before, where I've forgotten students' names, like especially coming back from like a long break.
Hmm.
I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
terrible with names, and so I always have to be like find interesting ways. How do you spell your name again? So
Yeah, I've done that plenty of times. Or like we've discussed this previously, right? I'll look at their Chromebook, right, to see like what their name is on their Chromebook. But you're right. When we came back from Christmas break this year, dude, it was like a 3 week break. It was long. Like we had like 2 weeks, then we had a couple of days that was like PD days. So I'm standing out in the hallway, kids are walking around, and I'm like, okay, I think I know I remember you. It took me a few minutes to really remember all the names, but it definitely is an issue. Now, once you get to now, you've been teaching for 6 years now, meaning that some of your kids that you had in seventh grade have now went through and become seniors. How your building is not high school and middle school combined,
it
correct?
is not. No, mine's only sixth, seventh, and eighth.
Okay. See, mine is 7 through 12. So I see my kids for years right after they go through. So I have kids all the time coming up to me and they're like, "Hey, Mr. Howard, how's it going? You remember me?" And I'm like, "Yes." And like I know them. I know their face, but dude, they grow up so fast after seventh grade. Like between like seventh and ninth, they change so much. It's really difficult. But then whenever they're like, I'm like, okay. So most of the time I'm just honest. I'm like, you're gonna have to remind me the name. Then they tell me the name. I'm like, oh my god, yeah, second bell, like third row back. Like I remember you now. But they just change so much. But yes, that one's all the time. Forgetting kids' names. Sometimes it takes me a second to get it, but yeah, definitely something that happens a lot.
Yeah, you have like the seventh graders that are like really short in seventh grade, and then they come back and you're like they're like towering over you, and you're like, oh my goodness, how did you grow that much? You were so little. Like,
They're like, before they leave, they're like, "Have a good summer, Mr. Howard," and they come back, they're like, "How was your summer, Mr. Howard?" You're
yeah,
like, "Oh my god!" It's like, what happened?
absolutely, that happens to me all the time. We
Yeah,
have
that one.
our high school, they do this thing where like when graduation happens, there's a day where they will allow like the seniors that are graduating to go back to their middle schools and like see their
Oh,
they come in their cap and gown and they get to see us and they walk the halls and stuff. And so that's always that has started now. This will be my third year of doing that, and it's awesome. But like remembering those kids, like those names, like you said, as soon as you get the name, you're like,
mhm.
oh yeah, I remember you for sure. But getting that name because they've changed just so much is so difficult. So
It's it's always like the ones that you remember for sure is the ones that you had to get onto all the time, right? You're like, "Oh yeah, I remember you. Like, I definitely remember you."
absolutely, that name
Like,
is ingrained in my brain.
yeah, unfortunately, yeah, like, it's the quiet ones that come that you just you never have to say their name. You never have
Mhm.
like, they're just always just chill, right? And I think that's something that I've been trying to make more of a concerted effort to do is pull those kids and have the conversations with them and get to know them a little bit, and, because they'll just sit there, I mean, all year, they'll just sit there, they'll do their work, they'll turn it in, and, I like to get to know them and make sure that, make a connection when I can.
Mhm.
Okay, we are moving on now to my number 2. Alright, my number 2. Now this is one that, I think a lot of people are going to admit, at least I think they'll admit it. I will admit it. So, have you ever heard another teacher either in their room dealing with their classroom, or, like, they've had their kids out in the hallway, and their kids are a little out of hand, and you've thought, "Oh my god, thank god it's not just me."
Absolutely. Yes, that has happened to me a few times.
All the time. Like, to me, it's I think teachers, especially new teachers, they hear they worry about people judging their classes, right? And thinking negatively of them, but I don't think that's usually the case. I think that most of us can relate to having problems dealing with some things. Now, of course, you do see moments where teachers have their kids and they're doing fantastic. You're like, oh my god, like their class is doing great. Like, oh, my class hasn't been that good lately. But I think for the most part, people are they're empathetic. They relate to it. They understand kind of what you're dealing with. I think that's more the case than it is people being like arrogant or having an ego or thinking they're better than you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I'm not over here judging you know, other classes when I hear them in the hallway and stuff. I'm thinking, oh, thank God, like it's not just me, like you said. So I definitely think that a lot of people have that, but I do have that fear. Like when we're in the hallway, walking down the hallway, and like my class is a little loud, I'm always like, guys, there's other classes going on. Shh, shh, shh.
Oh yeah,
Like,
the same thing, man. Like for sure, all the time.
yeah,
And it's hard. Like we have my coworker and I. We have really big classes. We have probably over 30 per bell. So it's when we go out in the hallway, we take restroom breaks. We do those things because that's kind of how we handle restroom at our school. It can be difficult to get them to just like be quiet. I don't want to say, hey, you're at a complete level zero. We don't talk at all. Like I usually just tell them, I don't want to hear you individually, right? Like if everyone's kind of whispering and talking low and it's just kind of this low murmur, I'm cool with that. But like I shouldn't hear distinctly your conversation with somebody else, right? Because that's when it's like, all right, well, that's now it's a problem, right? So I think that's something that most teachers will at least hopefully relate to, but also maybe give them a little bit of comfort in knowing that the teachers around them more than likely are empathetic. and understand kind of what you're dealing with more so than being judgmental, hopefully, if that's the case. Now, I'm not saying that's always it's everybody. I'm sure there's cases out there where some teachers are like, "Oh my god, get your kids together. Like, what are you doing?" Like, I get that, but I think for the most part that's not the case. So, all right. Moving on now to your number 3. What you got for me?
All right. So my number 3 is, have you ever um, had a kid? Now this one's going to be embarrassing to say, but I feel like
I dread it.
a lot of people have shared in this. Have you ever had a kid take a fall for your fart?
No, I have never done that. I can safely say that I have never done that. Please tell me that's not the case.
You've never done that.
No, never. I've never had a kid take the fall. No, I've been like, "That was me. That was me." Never. No, I've never done that.
No, so all right. So it's not like I'm like. So the way I phrased it makes it seem like I'm like blaming a kid for it.
It's it's
No, but it's like
you said take the fall for your fart. That's
not
what
an
you said.
individual kid, but it's like you're up, you're doing your thing, and then like again, we're all human. Sometimes it happens, and then you just kind of walk on, and then they're like, "Oh my god, who farted?" And you don't say
Okay,
anything.
okay,
Like
okay.
I'm not saying I'm singling out a kid.
No, I'm saying that you had like a real bro in the class that was like they knew you did it, but they're just there. They've got your back, and they're like that was me. It's like the episode of Family Guy where Peter farts in front of Lois's dad, and he's like, "What was that?" And she's like, "Hi, Daddy. That was me. This is Peter." Like that's where I'm at with that.
No, no, absolutely not. That I would never let a kid do that. But just, you don't claim it.
I mean, if they're willing. I mean, come on. That's just a bro. That's just that's just they just got your back. You're their favorite teacher.
Yeah,
They've
for
got
real.
you.
Just I don't know if I've ever had a relationship with a student so strong that they would take a fall for my fart. But no, you just you just walk on by, and then they're like, "Oh my goodness, who farted?" And they never suspect the teacher. They're never going
Yeah.
to say it was Mr. Howard. So you just kind of just ignore it.
I can safely say that I can't think of a time where that's been the case with me. Now I can say that I've had kids leave and been about to die. Like I've had that before.
Hey,
It's
I'm
like,
not saying
oh
I'm doing
man,
it every
I,
single class period, but
I'm sweating. It's getting bad.
yeah, I'm not saying I've had to do it like it's not like it's a common occurrence, but it has happened a time or two. So
I've heard of plenty of other teachers that have said that, um, have mentioned that. I can say that I don't know if I've ever done it. I don't know if they've ever noticed it. That you know what I mean. It's never been like that noticeable.
mhm.
So I don't. Not that I can say for sure, but I know for sure that I've been about like ready to die at the end of the bell. Or during the bell, just sweating like oh my god. Which you see, I've got a co-teacher, so life's a little easier for me. You know, I can step out and go to the restroom when I want to. That's the benefit of having two of us in the room. So that's good.
That would be nice, yes. Yeah, I have to, you know, fill out 3 forms, knock on 3 doors, make 2 phone calls before I can go to the restroom, so, you know,
Yeah, it's a long process, a lot of red tape.
a lot of red tape. You can't just up and go at your leisure, so I've had to knock on a few doors before and been like, "Hey, you have to watch my kids. I gotta go." Like,
I'm dying. Yeah. Oh, I've been there. But back when I was by myself like that, oh, I've been there. But
yeah.
okay, moving on. We are now on my number 3. Now, this is one that I don't think you'll expect this one. Okay. Um, and I heard teachers talking about this the other day. Um, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I've done this before, like to an extent, a little bit, not terribly, but I've done it before. Everyone's taking a test. It's dead quiet. They have like 30 minutes to take the test. You got a timer up. It's running. You're watching everyone get finished one at a time. Finally, the last one finishes, and they're all just sitting there. But it's so peaceful and so quiet that you just don't tell them that everyone's done. They're all just sitting there. And you're like, people still taking the test. Everyone needs to be quiet.
Be respectful of
Like,
everyone's time.
be respectful. I will admit, I've done that for a few minutes. Okay, I've not done it for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, anything like that. But I will admit that there's been times where I'm like, I think everyone's done, but God, it's so peaceful in here, and I dread saying that everyone's done because they're all going to go nuts. So, is that something that you have ever done?
I will safely say I do not believe so, actually. I don't think I've ever done that one. Now I have been known to, if we're doing something like that, like, and we have a timer on the board, to just kind of, you know, add an extra minute on there without them noticing. That has happened before. If I'm like, this activity's going real well, and then like maybe that some of them may need a little extra time, I'll just be like, all right, let's just back it up a little bit, and they'll never notice. Like they never notice that there was an extra minute.
You just keep on adding a minute every now and then.
So I have done that, but I don't think I've ever, like, usually when we finish assessments, I have something else for them to do, like some sort of activity that is engaging and, not super strenuous on what they're doing. So like usually they finish that and then they do whatever it is they're doing. So like obviously Blookett's like review for like the next unit, vocabulary,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So
Well, we always have kids that, we're not, at our school at least, we're not super strict on like due dates per se. Like, if you turn it in, at the end of the day, like I'll typically will take it. Like we have some cutoffs, but they're really lenient. So we always have kids that is kind of working on something usually. Like they have something to do. So you finish your test and go back on Google Class and find something that you need to turn in or you need to work on, and usually there's something that they can do. That's usually how we handle it. It's like they'll raise their hand. Hey, what do I need to do? I'll say go to Google Class, check your missing work. See, is there anything that you can redo? Because we do a lot of retakes on assessments and assignments. Because at the end of the day, like we want them to do well, right? Like that's the goal. I understand that we're trying to teach responsibility and turning things in on time and all that stuff as well. But content is king in a lot of ways, and we want to make sure that they get it. So yeah, definitely, that is something that I've been guilty of in the past, of just kind of sitting there for just a couple minutes, like, oh man, and then every now and then you'll have a kid be like, "Is everyone finished?" And you're like, I think I think there's one more.
I'm not finished. I'm the one
I,
more.
it me.
It me, yeah. Definitely.
All right. All right. Now we are moving on to your number 4.
Okay.
What do you got? What do you
All
got?
right. So, have you ever had to eat like a snack or lunch? Your lunch gets like delivered late and you have to eat it in class.
Okay. All right. So here's kind of the case with me. So we have a teacher that works with us who has a connection with Panera Bread, and she has a basically a full table just full of things between our classrooms. We have a little classroom that's off of our classroom. So I mean, at any point in the day, right next to me, there is muffins and brownies and cinnamon rolls and bagels. I mean, like the whole spread. I mean, it's wild. But she gives it to like kids at the end of the day who may need an extra snack before like an extracurricular, or she uses it as positive reinforcement for some of our kids. We use it for a PBIS store. They like buy muffins and brownies and stuff like that. So it's so have I ever done that? Yes. Like I'm just like, man, right in the middle of the bell, I'm just like, I'm hungry. Like I'll just step over and grab a muffin or whatever. Which I've been on a diet the last week, so it's been so hard, dude. Like yesterday, we was doing the PBIS store, and we going around with this little cart, and we had all these brownies and stuff on it, and there was a kid sitting there, and I'm like, please buy this brownie, please, because if you don't buy, if I need someone to eat this, because I'm going to eat it. This has been 2 bells. I'm trying my best here. Please buy this brownie. So, yes, I have done that. But I will say that if it's a time where kids don't have access to snacks and food and stuff, I really don't like eating in front of the kids.
Yeah, yeah. So like your school, I know some schools vary on this one, like food and drinks in the classroom with students.
Well, it's with our school, I don't think there's anything definitive in terms of in terms of the school. We kind of come up with that as a
Mm,
team. So our team policy is that you are not to have snacks in the classroom. You can have a water bottle.
mhm,
And really, since COVID, that all water fountains were out and all that stuff. So that changed a lot.
mm.
But you can have a water bottle, but you can't have snacks and food, and because it's you have the kids running around the room, sticking their hands out, wanting food from each
Talkies.
other, or dude,
It's always
Takis, hot
talkies.
fries. Oh, it's crazy. So always that's always happening. You're trying to teach, and all you hear is crunching or reaching into chip bags. Oh, it's like really distracting. So yeah, no, we kind of come up with it as a team, and that's the way we usually approach it.
Well, we do the same thing, right? So our team has kind of agreed like water's fine, food and
Hmm.
snacks, not so much. And so if there's ever a time where like my lunch is delivered late and I have to eat, it is painfully awkward because like the students are just like staring at me, like locked in on whatever it is I have. And they'll be like,
you're, you're eating your brownie. You're like, mm.
they're like, will you share your pizza with us? And I'm like, no.
I will not do that. Well, I know, like, if you order food, right? So some people order food out. Like we do not. Like you don't get a ton of time for lunch, right? Like by the time you take kids, like if you have to escort them to lunch and then from lunch, if you have to pick them up or anything like that, you're supposed to get a half hour, but you know, but there's a lot of things that just happens with lunch where it just takes some time. So, like when you're ordering out, it's hard to hit that window perfectly where things get to you right when lunch starts, right?
Mhm.
And you're not scarfing it down. But I always eat in the cafeteria. I eat a salad every day at least. That's what I've been doing. I get my rabbit food every day. It's really sad.
Yeah.
It's like I can't. So, but yeah, no, I can't say that I've done that a ton.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often to me again, but it definitely has happened. And then like it's like just everyone's just like staring at me. So
You're like, hope no one's hungry. This pizza's real good.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's why you try to keep from eating in front of kids if you can. But I mean, hey, man's got to eat. I
sometimes it
don't know.
happens. Sometimes you have
It
to. So
happens. Yeah, it does happen. Okay, we are now moving on to my number 4.
yes,
Okay. So, have you ever now this may be something that is more prevalent to me since I think I taught more before the digital age of Chromebooks and you had more paper and pencil. But have you ever given a student credit or exempted a student because you may have lost their work?
I I have I have done that before.
I have done that back now. It's been a few years because now everything's digital, and it's like, no, you didn't turn it in. It says missing right here. Like I know you didn't turn it in, but before the digital age, before everything was digital, dude, kid would be like, I turned it in. I gave it to you, and not like I gave it to you in the hallway or out here, and you took it from me, and I'm like, man, maybe I did. I don't know. Like, and I feel bad because I'm like, I'm not gonna give you a 0 when I don't think I did. They may be lying to me, but I'm like, I just don't know for sure. So if I have to like choose between just exempting if it's a little like classroom assignment or something, now if it's a test, it's different. Like we're really going to investigate that. But if it's like a little classroom assignment, it's like, okay, like I'm not going to just punish you because I may have lost it. It is possible that I laid it down somewhere and just wasn't paying attention. It is
Yeah,
possible.
like their exit slip. You're not going to make them go back and redo the exit slip for that day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, why didn't you turn that in? Oh, I did. I gave it to you. He was walking around the room. I was like, oh, man, I may have been walking around the room. I don't remember.
Yeah, I may have taken that and just sat it somewhere, you know?
Dude, I am the worst, dude, at just randomly putting things down in the room. So my co-teacher, I don't know how she doesn't kill me because like the remote to the board, dry erase markers, the marker that goes to our smart board, like I will just randomly plant those things around the room, just dropping them random spots. And we're always looking for them because of me. It's not because of anyone else. It's me.
I do the same thing in my room. Now, of course, I don't have a co-teacher, so I'm just like I kind of know it's like organized chaos. I know kind of where things are at, but I am a pocket stuffer.
Oh yeah, dude. Same.
Dude,
Same.
yesterday I came home. Are you ready for this? And emptied my pockets out. Usually I don't even empty them out. Usually it ends up in the pockets in the washer, right? And my wife is like going to kill me. But
Oh,
I emptied my
yeah.
pockets out. Are you ready for this? You're never going to expect it. I had 3 expo markers, right?
Okay.
2 pens,
Uh-huh.
a pencil,
Okay.
post-it notes,
Okay. Gotta write those hall passes.
my star tickets, right, from
Uh-huh.
school.
Yeah.
My projector remote was in a pocket.
Yep.
And are you ready?
Been
You
there.
ready for this one? You're
Yep.
never going to expect this one. 2
Okay.
golf balls.
Did you take them from kids or something?
No, 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 no. I used them in the science experiment about sound. I
Oh,
stuffed them in
okay.
my pocket at the end of the day.
Dude, I'm awful for it. I will come home and just dig things out of my pocket, the Post-it notes, all that stuff. Like, I wasn't joking when I told you over Christmas that I wanna buy one of those little waiter aprons that they wear. They put the little thing in that I can just take off at the end of the day and leave it there and then come back the next day and get it and just keep my Post-it notes. And yes, it's an apron, but I don't care. Like, I'm ruining laundry at this point. I've gotta stop this. So, definitely, I definitely do that one. That one's yeah, that one's a big one, and I didn't put it on my list, but I considered that one. That is one that I definitely thought about putting on my list. I'm surprised we've not had a duplicate yet,
Yeah, I
actually.
know. I know. All the things you've said, I have for the most part done, but I didn't have them on my list. I didn't think about those.
Okay, we are now moving on, I think, to my number 5.
Yep.
Okay, my number 5. So and this is the last one. We came up with 5 each.
Hmm.
So have you done this? Now, this is one that I don't think you probably have done, but my English squad out there, my English teachers, they're probably going to relate. Okay, don't know if you'll relate to this, but my English people will. You start grading an assignment, and you grade the first few, and they receive fairly low scores, and you're like, oh, these aren't that great, and you grade them, but then as you get to the end of the pile and you've graded them, you think back to those first couple, and you're like, okay, those weren't so bad, and you have to go back and adjust the grade.
Those that is 100% happened to me. Science is a lot of writing, so
Yeah,
we still have a lot of that where using a rubric to grade. Um, and so yeah, that has happened to me before too, where I'm like, wait, maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought.
yeah. It's like I guess as you've got on, you've graded a little softer towards the end, and then it's like, okay, I have to be fair to the first few that I started off hard. Like I came in like a wrecking ball in those first few, and now I have to go back and adjust those couple. So yeah, those are some that I'm always that's always the case. Like I'm always having to go back and reevaluate the first few after I've graded an essay or something like that. So I wasn't sure how relatable that one would be, but I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only
Well, I think
one.
that's going to be relatable for social studies and science, but math, writing and math confuses me.
Like, oh, where math classes have to do writing to
Yes,
some degree.
yes,
That's a hard
that
thing to
is
do.
tough.
It's a hard thing to ask writing teachers to do. And that could be a full episode by itself.
Hmm.
Like how can math incorporate it. But that's a discussion for
Yeah,
another time.
absolutely.
But
Absolutely. But yes, I agree. Grading, you start out super hard and then by the end of it you're kind of like, okay, well, maybe I was a little too strict at the beginning of this one. So, and I think that's where like obviously calibrating grading among your colleagues is comes into play, right? That's like a trick, a little tip that, a lot of people I feel like I was guilty of not doing for a long time. Um,
when you say calibrating, you mean like making sure that you and your colleagues are grading kind of on a similar
yeah.
scale, like in terms of rigor or difficulty.
Hmm.
Obviously, we use rubrics. We get together as a TBT and we will grade things together and see. And I pretty much always find out that I don't grade things hard enough. Like that, it feels like it's always like everyone around the room's like, I would give it a two. I would give it a two. And I'm like, I'd have gave it a three. Like, man, like why? Am I soft? Like, what's the deal? Like, so, but I think it's important though that you look and make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page and being consistent and making sure everything's fair,
Yep.
equal.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is now. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You're number five, right?
Yes. Yes. This is my number five.
Okay, what you got for
All
me?
right. So my number five. Have you ever been called mom or dad?
Oh yes, yes. That is, and it's funny because they catch it quickly,
Oh yes.
right? Now, I will say more often I get called other teachers' names, like every day, every day. So I work with a colleague of mine. His name is Mr. Todd. Great guy, excellent teacher, good friend of mine. And I was at Kings Island, and I'm walking into Kings Island, and which is a theme park. People that's not around, in Ohio. But I'm at this theme park. I'm walking in, and I hear a kid scream from like across the park, "Hey, Mister Todd!" And I just went close and just kept walking. And then he realized what he had said. He's like, "Oh, I mean, Mister Howard."
Yeah.
So yeah, I get that all the time. But the mom and dad, I have had it. I have had
I've
it.
had it too. Now, I have a funny story of a colleague of mine. Now, this was not for me, but this is his story. But he said one time a student looked at him and intentionally said, "You look like a stepdad."
I don't know. I don't know if I
Can
like
you
the
explain that
sound
one
of
to
that.
me?
I don't even want to now. No, that's sounding like an invitation almost. Like I don't know if I like that. Like that sounds a little
Yeah,
weird.
he was like, "I don't know what that means," and he just kind of like moved on
He
from
just
that.
he just he just like keep walking. Like yeah, no, I don't like that.
Absolutely. But yes, I've been called dad before. I know a few. I think I have a few female colleagues who have been called mom. Um,
hmm
and that one's always it's a tough one. How do you handle that one? I'm kind of interested in how you handle that one. That's one of the reasons I put it up there.
Now, when you say being called it, do you mean like on
On
accident?
accident, yes. Not like they're
Okay,
not
well,
intentionally doing it.
I mean, if they do it, obviously, like they'll be like, "Hey, Dad," or whatever. Then at first I'm like, "Dad," and they're like, "Oh, I mean, Mr. Howard." Like that's what I usually because they. It's obviously just a slip of the tongue. Like they don't even. It's just habit.
Absolutely.
I mean, I call my 4-year-old son Roscoe, which is my dog, all the time. If I'm dealing with him, I'm like, Roscoe, go outside, blah, 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 talking to Roscoe. And then I'm like trying to talk to my wife about my son. I'll be like, yo, Roscoe's downstairs. And she'll be like, you mean Nolan? Like, so I know that's just something that
Oh yeah,
happens.
absolutely. And so I like try to, because I think it's super embarrassing for a student to do, right? Like that's an embarrassing thing for them. So I try to like if they sometimes they don't even catch it, and I'm like I just move on.
Yeah, I've done that before. Most of the time, when I get called Mr. Todd on the daily, I just keep going. I don't even acknowledge it. The other kids do. They'll be like, "That's not Mr. Todd," and they'll be like, "Oh, okay." Or "That's did you say mom or dad?"
Yeah,
Like, yeah, yeah. We've got that before.
absolutely.
That that is definitely something. But all right, I think we have now reached. We've exhausted our list. I don't even know. Did we accidentally do 11? I don't even
No,
know. We
I
did
believe
11.
we did 10. I believe we're good.
We did 10?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure the
I
pattern.
think we doubled up on yours 4 and 5 and then did my 5. So,
Okay, I was really confused. I was like, "Wait, how are you going last?"
yeah.
Okay. Anyways, that I think will basically wrap this up. I hope that people listening to this can find some things to relate to or some things to discuss. And at the end of the day, our jobs are really tough. It's we have a lot of hats that we wear. We juggle a lot of things, and there's some things that you just have to laugh at just a little bit and have a sense of humor. And we hope that people were able to do that. Please consider subscribing on YouTube or any other podcast platform that you're listening on. I know that we're available on a ton of them now, so we would really, really appreciate that. We'll be moving forward with our social media accounts, looking at creating our Facebook and trying to get people involved in discussing things on that page. But as for now, we will see you next time on episode 5 of Brothers on the Board. Thank you for listening and have a great day.